आओ सब मिलकर इंसानियत बचाएं, बहुत हो गया बस अब हाथ मिलाएं। आओ सब मिलकर इंसानियत बचाएं, बहुत हो गया बस अब हाथ मिलाएं। लोग मर रहे हैं, फरियाद कर रहे हैं, इस मुश्किल वक्त में आह भर रहे हैं। न तुम अलग हो हमसे, न हम अलग हैं तुमसे, एक जैसा रंग और जुबान है कसम से। आओ सब अपनी दुनिया सजाएं, जो आ गई हैं दूरियां इनको मिटाएं। हम तेरे साथ हैं, हम तेरे साथ हैं, हम तेरे साथ हैं। तुम्हें चोट लगे तो हमें भी दर्द होता है, चाहे जितनी दूरियां हो फिर भी दिल ये रोता है। हाँ, तुम्हें चोट लगे तो हमें भी दर्द होता है, चाहे जितनी दूरियां हो फिर भी दिल ये रोता है। कुछ लोग हैं जब से जो लड़ने की बात करते हैं, लड़ना ही है तो इस बीमारी से लड़ते हैं। आओ सब मिलकर झगड़े मिटा। हाँ, तुम्हें चोट लगे तो हमें भी दर्द होता है, चाहे जितनी दूरियां हो फिर भी दिल ये रोता है। कुछ लोग हैं जब से जो लड़ने की बात करते हैं, लड़ना ही है तो इस बीमारी से लड़ते हैं। आओ सब मिलकर झगड़े मिटाएं, अपने प्यारों को मिलकर बचाएं। हम तेरे साथ हैं, हम तेरे साथ हैं, हम तेरे साथ हैं।
Hi, I'm Suvir Bajaj from Bombay, India.
And I'm Umair Qazi from Karachi, Pakistan.
We've been friends for over 15 years now, and often I dream of getting into my car and driving to go and see Umair over the weekend. Door to door, the journey is only 883 kilometers for me, yet it's impossible to get there.
And in this podcast, Suvir and I are going to try to take that journey digitally as we explore the similarities that Pakistanis and Indians have through the lens of content, community, and culture. We will chat with respected filmmakers, chefs, musicians, even stand-up comics who may have performed across the border and even have fans here and there.
Our aim is to try and bridge the gap between our two countries through transformational dialogue with the youth of our nations. I'm sure that together we will identify several similarities. After all, we are all cut from the same cloth. And indeed, we might find a few differences, but we will celebrate them.
Welcome to 883 to Infinity. I know we say this sometimes even superficially to almost all of our episodes, but this one is really, really special.
And unfortunately not in a upbeat, exciting way. It's actually special because it's a message straight from our minds and straight from our hearts.
And unlike other episodes, there's no guest here because we've already gotten an unwelcome guest in both our countries, in India and Pakistan, in the form of COVID-19. It was here last year. We tried to kick it out, and it seems now that it's back with a vengeance.
So for this episode, we're going to go out of our comfort zones. We're not following our usual workflows for 883 and creating this raw, rough, straight from the heart conversation tackling the politicization of the pandemic.
We hope it gives you food for thought.
So, Umair, I want to start off by giving you an update on what the COVID crisis is looking like in India at the moment. Of course, we know that globally, India is the most affected country at the moment. We're doing over 350,000 new cases a day. This number has been consistent for approximately 2 weeks now, and the number is not showing any signs of slowing down across the country. All big cities are trying their best to slow things down, but of course, the repercussions have now gone way beyond control. The mortality rate is consistent at 1%, and we're recording about 3,500 deaths a day. This obviously is caused by the massive lack of infrastructure and oxygen around the country. The healthcare infrastructure is highly overburdened. There are no hospital beds and proper facilities for people who are looking for them. Despite having a fever of 102, 103, or even 104 degrees, people are spending hours, sometimes 12, 14 hours to try and find themselves a hospital bed, and sometimes dying just waiting outside hospitals looking for these beds. Yes, that's how dire the condition has gotten. In fact, even for those fortunate few who manage to get a hospital bed, a lot of them whose oxygen levels dip considerably below, SpO2 levels dip considerably below 95, 90, some people come down to 70 also, don't have oxygen supply. India as a country has a lot of shortage of oxygen supply at the moment. And this is just a massive example of a complete breakdown of public infrastructure, of facilities, of the healthcare system. Deaths are piling up and are highly underreported by the news, by the media. Cremation facilities are very, very overburdened. In fact, so certain news reports state that a lot of workers at burial grounds, at cremation centers, have also fled the site and left for fear of their own lives, because of course a lockdown has been called in all big cities, and there are certain protocols that COVID positive patients who are tested need to be either buried with or cremated with. And a lot of these cremation workers have actually fled the site by virtue of them being afraid of their own lives, and possibly by virtue of a threat of a national lockdown around the corner. And as a result, these burial grounds and cremation facilities are very, very overburdened with the sheer number of bodies that are coming, and just can't handle the magnitude. States have already declared a lockdown. Well, they're not calling it a lockdown because the center isn't allowing the word lockdown to be used for fear of an economic meltdown, which is exactly what happened in April, May, June of last year, because the country centrally went into a lockdown, and of course the economy crashed, and we were 25% behind the expected GDP of the quarter. So the center is not supporting the use of the word lockdown, but 13 states have now unilaterally taken the decision to impose very, very strict restrictions as far as commercial activity is concerned, as far as trade, travel, transport is concerned. Of course, as far as social distancing is concerned, you're not even allowed to get out of your house. The police has become very vigilant in big cities like Bombay. It's patrolling the streets, and it's discouraging people from loitering. It's discouraging people from even getting out of their houses to stretch their legs in the evening post work and just go for a walk. That's how dire the situation has gotten in India at the moment, Umair.
That sounds absolutely harrowing. So, so they won't label it a lockdown, but for all effects and purposes, it is like
Absolutely.
that. I mean, there's no other way to go, right?
Absolutely.
And personally, we've been seeing some of this footage come in as well, and it's just heartbreaking, the sort of stuff that we're able to see. But I'm curious, like, personally, as someone who's sitting in Bombay right now, like, how does it feel like personally? Like, how has your day changed from a couple of, from before this peak happened?
Well, to talk about today, I woke up in the morning and I saw messages on my phone at 7:15 in the morning when I woke up, which were updates about people, my friends, my colleagues, and people in their extended families having passed away. Over the course of my day, from 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. when I started my day to about noon, I already spoke to 3 people who mentioned that they've had deaths in their family this morning. And later, during the course of the second half of the day, I spoke to 5 people that were just surrounded by death. And that is pretty much the mahal in India at the moment, that whether you look left or right, you're interfacing with people who are dealing with so much death, so much anxiety, so much depression, that people have lost the willingness to wake up and get to work and do things, the willingness to live life. There's no concept of normalcy in context to how people are living life. And how do you find the motivation to wake up and try and live a normal and productive life when you're just surrounded by so much anxiety and so much trauma? That's one side of things. And the other side of things is this imminent fear that's gripping people now, because clearly this new strain, is terrorizing
Yeah.
its victims in a way that last year never saw. And you're hearing people
Yeah.
going through really, really bad bouts of illness. And it's so common now to have pneumonia, and it's so common to, have these post corona symptoms that last you for 2 to 3 months, that cause massive fatigue and body ache. That this fear has now gripped people, and the fear is controlling decision making, the fear is controlling life. And it's a very unsettling feeling. It's very, very overwhelming, and no one is themselves anymore for the last few months in India.
I can only imagine what it feels like. Actually, because we've been having these conversations, I can actually, this is something that I was speaking to my wife as well about, is, when I had spoken to you yesterday, the day before, we were thinking about this. So I can see it in your eyes. I can see it in your disheveled hair. I can see it in your voice. It's that, it's obviously when you're surrounded by such huge odds, and you're surrounded by bad news coming from all sides, and so much so that it becomes the norm. It definitely, I mean, my sympathies are with you. It's just, I hope that we can get over this hump. So in Pakistan, obviously we're a fraction of the size of India. So the absolute numbers are probably not going to be, we're in a similar boat, but the sheer magnitude that you see in India, we haven't quite reached yet. So in comparison, let's say if you're looking at 350,000, if you're looking at 350,000 new cases a day, we're only now, this is the ironic part, right? So in that context, I have the luxury of saying that, it's only, but even like 4,400 cases a day is a massive amount, because each one of those cases has that potential to end in a very, very horrible way. And surprisingly, if you look at the mortality rate of Pakistan versus India, we have a higher mortality. So if you're sitting at, let's say, about 1%, our mortality rate, and this is not just today, this has been throughout the pandemic, throughout in 2020, the peak that we had, we saw similar patterns whereby we're seeing mortality rates of 2.5% versus the 1% that we're seeing in India, which is quite strange. I still haven't been able to find out why that is, because logically, no, not logically, the assumption is that the older the population, the more, but the mortality rate should be slightly higher. But in this case, like in a comparison between Pakistan and India's median age, Pakistan has a younger median age as compared to India, right? So ours is 22 years, is somewhere around 28, 29. So, but despite that fact, we see the opposite. We see that the mortality rate is much higher. And same thing over here. So, we had, I live in Karachi, so we had the mayor actually designated 5 massive graveyards last year, specifically for coronavirus victims, and they still, I mean, I'm sure they're still piling up. So we don't have funeral pyres, but we do have, we're running out of space, and there's this it's during this time, I've some people from my family also that have actually lost the battle to this disease, and some people, of course, they've gone away for different reasons, for illness, for old age. And as a matter of fact, my grandmother passed away a few months ago, and honestly, it's even at that very sensitive moment, it's unfathomable that you're in this grief, and you get to find a burial space for a loved one, and it's not there, and you have to grease palms, and you have to figure out a way, whose mindset where it's just impossible. So I mean, there's no words to describe it. Magar, unfortunately, Pakistan mein, so we see the news, we see the snippets, we see what's happening in India, but it seems like, when I came over today, back to my place. I went to my parents' place for iftar, for dinner. And when I came over, I saw there's still people thronging the streets, right? So there's still people. We have Ramzan, and Ramzan is, where our schedules change a little bit, and we become night owls. So Ramzan traditionally is when we have all those Ramzan night cricket, and there's not a single street that is not filled with people just banging their cricket bats and all, without mask, without fear of social distancing, this, that, whatever. So where the hammer of the state is falling is on commercial enterprises. They are trying to enforce SOPs, but mostly the general population isn't really. It feels like they're not really adhering to the SOPs that are put in place, and the warning seems to be over and over again that look at what's going on in India. You will, you're the same people. You have the same habits. You're similarly careless. You will run into the same problems. मगर वही है तो मैं like from my personal experience बता रहा हूँ. So we have in Ramzan, mosque attendance goes up and people go for Taraweeh, which is a longer form of prayer, and regularly go to 5 times a day to prayer. And अब उसमें flip side ये है कि when someone dies, in our culture, in our religion, they have to, then the funeral actually takes a procession. It starts at the mosque. So the Maulvi Sahib, whether it's a woman or a man or a child or whoever, the neighborhood mosque actually does a little prayer for them, after which their body is then transported back to the graveyard. So literally in mosques, what's going on is that right before prayer, the leader of the prayer actually says, ladies and gentlemen, so and so and so and so and so and so's father, brother, grandfather, they passed away. Unfortunately, please join us right after this prayer to say a few prayers for the departed soul. वहाँ पे वहाँ realization हो रही है, but then again SOPs follow नहीं हो रहे, वही no social distancing during the prayer, no mask during the prayer, maybe 5% of the people. Of course, this is anecdotal evidence that I'm just speaking from around my home, but it just seems like people not taking it as seriously as they should. Now the government has put in smart lockdowns, right? So our government also went through that big lockdown back in the day in 2020. Now they're doing smart lockdown. So right now, as we speak right now, Lahore is under 2-day lockdown for the last 2 days complete. Karachi is under these area-wise lockdowns whereby they're closing off certain areas. And actually, even the Prime Minister was tested positive for COVID earlier this year in March. So the threat is very much around there, and all the every like bit of news or bit of advice that we hear from people is, you don't want to end up where India is, and people are just brushing it off. They're like, whatever, we'll deal with it when it comes here. But it's already here. So the army has been called in because of this attitude of people, like people all over me actually. The army has been called out. So it's beyond, let's say, police jurisdiction also. It's beyond, paramilitary also. Literally, the army has come out to actually ensure that everybody is following the protocol, wearing the mask. But of course, they simply can't be everywhere at the same time. There have been in Karachi, the traders markets, the mobile phone markets, all those, like, जो सारे गढ़ हैं, जहाँ पे सारी मतलब industry जहाँ से चलती है. Karachi is the industrial capital of the country, right? So they are defiant. They're like, nothing doing. We have to, we have dhanda and काम करना है, which is understandable as well. They need to earn money, but then there's writ of the state. The army is coming in, locking down entire markets, throwing people into jail, and all of that sort of stuff. So it's quite a lot of chaos. But if just the interesting thing is that if you don't look at the absolute numbers, if you look at the percentages, so India and Pakistan, agar aap unka graph dekhe from, let's say, the 1st of March last year to probably earlier this month, it's literally, it's the same. They're following the same sort of thing. So there was a slight difference in the middle whereby we because of our lockdowns, or I don't know what the cause is, but we had a slight dip in, let's say, right after August. But otherwise, percentage to percentage wise, we are in the same boat. We have the same sort of bulge. We have the same curve. The curve is not flattened. It's getting much and much worse right now as well. So I'm just at a loss of words on how this. I sympathize with you. I can understand that it's very difficult going through this. And at the same time, I feel so frustrated because I can't seem to convince anybody around me. And I see just general carelessness because इसके बाद हमारा जैसे इंडिया में कुंभ मेला था, big event. So हमारा आएगी हमारी ईद आएगी. So there is going to be, it's a cultural event, it's a religious event. And not to say that I'm in favor of just locking people in, but just I'm very, very afraid right now as well.
No, I hear you, Merit. And of course, as you can imagine, Ramzan is also a very big month in India. Of course, India has a very, very high populace of Muslim population as well. And, government is trying its best to ensure that they, build in a certain amount of responsibility in people. But I guess, like you rightly said, there's only so much that the government and the police can do. And we'll talk more about that actually later, because that's an interesting subject that I feel that we should delve into a little later. Although there's been a slight bit of positivity, over the last maybe 30 odd days, not today, of course, but over the last 30 days, as far as vaccination in India. They started off by doing vaccinations for people who are 60, above the age of 60, and for people who are above the ages of 45 that have certain comorbidities. I think the first round of vaccinations for people above 60 for about 15% of that population have been complete. The rest still are pending. What's ironic is that they opened up the vaccination to people who are about 45 years of age. And as of a couple of days ago, as of the 1st of May, they opened up vaccination to people 18 plus as well, 18 to 44 as well. Now, that's very reassuring because they made this public statement a while ago saying that they're going to open up the vaccination post the 1st of May. But there is just such a short of vaccines in India. In fact, I have so many people in my family as well, my parents included, who've gotten their first shot 6 weeks ago, but have gone back for their second shot, and there are just no vaccines available. And it's really ironic because on one hand, they're saying that people who are 60 plus should come and get their second shot, and they're being sent away because there's a lack of vaccines available. And then they're inviting people who are 18 plus, who I would imagine would be considerably healthier and in considerably more stable places of their life from the perspective of being at risk to public health. But they're inviting them in to come and get vaccinated, and these vaccinations just don't exist. So it's reached a very, very scary place at the moment where, of course, India had a surplus a few months ago, but now has a massive deficit. And there's a lot of pushing and pulling between the states and the center. And, I'll tell you more about that as we go on. There's been a massive push to now obviously import. The government has now funded 3,000 crores to companies that are developing vaccines in India to ramp up their operations and to start increasing the frequency and the pace that they start, manufacturing these vaccines with. But of course, all of this is going to take a few months to stabilize, right? Which means it's going to be a very difficult summer despite the vaccine, despite the vaccination. And a lot of people who have been inoculated have still complained that they're getting, infected, which obviously means that it's not done its course in terms of being tried and tested. And that's a story by itself. Of course, there are more qualified people to be discussing that than you and me. But I think the state that we're in at the moment is that we had this massive surplus a few months ago, and we've gone into this massive deficit. And, it's again feeding the fear that I spoke about earlier, saying, people think that this vaccination is going to be a silver bullet. I get vaccinated and I'm going to be scot-free and I can do whatever I want. And especially because, the Western world, the USA has said that if you've gotten both your shots and you're doing something in the outdoors, you don't even need to wear a mask. They're saying that if you're gathering in public spaces in small groups, you don't need to wear a mask. So there's so much faith behind, being built, and so much trust being built behind this vaccine that people are considering it to be their silver bullet. But the reality of the matter is that we don't even have access to this vaccine in quantities that we really desire it to. Yeah. What's the situation like in Pakistan? I hear that there's a shortage there as well.
So we've, as of today, I think we've given out some 2 million odd doses. Unfortunately, it's so because the vaccine that we're giving out is it's two-tiered. I'm sure some same case as there as well. So I couldn't find that the numbers are not released to Pakistanis or to international bodies on the total number of people that have gone through the second phase as well, the second jab, and are fully vaccinated. So right now they've given out 2.1 million doses, but uski distribution is not quite clear. So but still, you know, if the it seems to be that generally isko world over jo iski vaccination ki jo load bearing capacity है उसको measure करते हैं, you know, X of 100 people. So right now we're not even like not even one of 100 Pakistanis, not even 1% is there. Of course, with once again, so it's optics, right? So we're only 220 million people compared to India's size. But then, you know, it's यहाँ पे so I'm curious. So what did this shortage occur when you shifted from, let's say, the 45 bracket to 18 plus, everybody, you know, Gen Pop can come in, or was it something that was brewing otherwise, do you think?
No, the shortage actually came in before 18 to 45 was even allowed in, which is the ironic situation over here, right? So in India, of course, we're following the same two-jab principle. And in India, they're distributing the vaccination free of cost in a government or state-sponsored hospital. And in private hospitals, they're taking a nominal fee of 250 rupees. So it's highly subsidized. The idea is that they don't want cost or price to be an impediment for people to come in and get vaccinated. Of course, there's a push to privatize administration of the vaccine, and you can buy it in private market, and it's going to be priced at 600 and 1200 rupees, etc. That's a story for another day. But at the moment, what they've done is they've kept the cost barrier so low. They've increased the reach of the number of hospitals administering because they want maximum number of people to have access to this. The irony is that the vaccination drive for 18 plus is opened only 3 days ago on the 1st of May, literally 3 days ago. But people have been complaining for 1 week or 2 weeks prior to that. People who are 45 plus and 60 plus have been complaining for a couple of weeks before that, saying they're just not getting appointments. You got to take an appointment on a little app, a CoWIN app, and take an appointment at a center closest to your house, or, you know, that has the vaccine that you have previously taken, because of course you can only get the same second jab of the same one, of the same company that you got the first jab. And people are just not getting appointments, you know, so there's just a shortage of vaccines available. And as a result, you know, this was an optical call to open vaccination drive for 18 plus post the 1st of May. And of course, to maintain the optics, they have to do this. But, you know, at least the state government in Maharashtra has tweeted saying that they might have to push it back by 3 weeks, you know, until they're able to restock and re-resource as far as the quantum of vaccinations in a city like Bombay is concerned.
Sure. So ours is slightly different. So yes, there is definitely a shortage. A shortage on a country level is there, in the sense that we don't have indigenous vaccine production, right? Like India, not even a little bit, let alone someone the size and scale of Serum Institute. So all of our stuff is, you know, it's either coming in through different channels. Magar isme, so we had a tiered opening as well. So 60 plus ko pehle mili, then 50 plus, then now from today onwards 40 plus, you know, people can just go to whatever and SMS karenge wo aa jayegi. They built a whole system around it. Magar shortage like country level pe hai, but I haven't heard of anybody saying that, you know, we have to wait 3 weeks for the government. You put in your thing, wo aapko ek hafte mein 2 hafte mein aa jata hai. So it seems, मुझे ये लग रहा है कि जनरल सेंटिमेंट भी एक थोड़ा पाकिस्तान में है, you know, and I speak about this a little later as well, that they don't trust vaccination because it's come so late, and, you know, there's so many things surrounding it. It seems to be that not everybody and this is within my immediate family as well, people who are eligible, a lot of people who are eligible, and they're like, no, not yet, maybe later. And I'm like, I can't get it. You know, you guys have that facility. Just go, step into a hospital and just get it done. They're like, nahi, you know, we have our doubts and stuff. So abhi is kisam ki mujhe lagta hai ki from a user point of view, aisi shortage nahi hai. But of course, you know, given that you have 220 million or abhi tak sirf 2 million aaye, to 2 million bhi doses aaye, matlab 2 million totally vaccinated nahi hai. So there is definitely a shortage. And then as far as the private thing is concerned, so that's free of cost through the government. As far as the private thing is, that's where we're disproportionately different than India. Probably because we have to, you know, we can't just buy the local vaccine. There's no local vaccine. So we have to get, the only available option is the government has actually recently opened up, has licensed a private pharma to import the Sputnik, which is the Russian vaccine, right? And so it's selling like in a city like upper urban middle class, upper class sort of people can go and get it from a hospital, assumably, for about like 13,000 rupees or 12,000 rupees, something like that, which is around 6,000 Indian. Still massive difference. मगर अमीर लोग हैं, हमें घूमना फिरना है, सब कुछ करना है, हमारे वो वैक्सीन पासपोर्ट्स बनने हैं, so we can do it. अच्छा, उसमें भी मसला ये है कि it's not really there. So there are more people, the demand is much higher than the supply, even at those rates. So there is, people are like myself and my family, my wife and I have been trying to get this for a couple of weeks now, and we've called every damn hospital in the neighborhood and other way as well कि भाई हमें वो online उनके Google forms भरे हुए हैं, हमने SMS पे registration करवाई हुई है, but they're like, sir, nothing doing, call us after 2 weeks. 2 weeks later they say call us after 2 weeks. So and then we hear of people that are actually getting them, and that's because किसी न किसी का दोस्त है जो कोई कहीं डॉक्टर है, कहीं जान पहचान है, कहीं गवर्नमेंट कांटेक्ट है जो उनकी लगवा रहे हैं, और and there's this black market that has emerged, and Ravi and I are not quite well versed on how to get into that black market, so we're unvaccinated in lockdown in our house. But otherwise so Pakistan has been, it's one of the 90 odd countries that come in the poorer nations of the world. So we were part of the COVAX initiative, right? So COVAX is this giant global body that is supposed to, take all the orders from the big in developed countries and then pool them together with the orders from the poorer countries, so that and sets a negotiated like price so that everybody gets the vaccine at the same price and at the same time. But the system hasn't been working. I mean, I'm sure if someone wants to dive into it, they can dive into it a little deeper to see why it's not working. But now, as it stands today, like the government is, यही जो आप बोल रहे हो, हमारे यहाँ थोड़ा सा government center or provincial governments में थोड़ा सा वो tussle है that everybody's jousting for their own share. So the provinces of Sindh and Punjab have actually reached out and have taken special permission from the government saying, federal government saying कि भाई आप लोग से तो procure नहीं हो रही, हमें अपने लिए लेने, हमें bilateral direct contacts करने का. So for example, Sindh has Sindh where I'm sitting, the government has reached out to this other Chinese manufacturer, what's his name? In Sindh, the Sindh government has tried to actually procure like 10 million doses of vaccine from CanSino, which is another, all of our vaccines seems to be coming from China at this point, because हमें जो Indian made vaccine थी, जिस पे बड़ा हुपला भी हुआ था इंडिया में भी, पाकिस्तान की मीडिया में भी, कि इंडिया में बनी हुई वैक्सीन हमारे लोगों को लगेगी, या वो लोग बोलेंगे हम वैक्सीन लाइफ सेविंग ड्रग उनको भेजेंगे, मगर it was all, eventually it was all for the better good of humanity. अब वो, because the numbers have risen so high, and the Serum Institute can't really provide, and the exports have stopped, like you said. So now we're not getting our share. The rest of the world is not getting their share of that COVAX vaccine, which was supposed to come in from India. So we have to rely on China. China ने हमें 1.5 million doses पहले दिए थे, फिर एक 5 lakh dose और अभी आ रहे हैं. So तकरीबन all of it is just coming from China. So even the local governments are trying to crack these bilateral deals. I don't know how. I mean, I'm sure the federal government has better negotiation power, but they're trying to say, हम हाथ पैर मार के कहीं से भी हम ले लें. But it's just, it seems like a losing battle, especially right now, given that COVAX hasn't met its target. India is in a state of affairs where it cannot produce it, and India is supposed to be the biggest factory of this vaccine in the world, right? So it's a pretty tough spot to be in. I don't know what the future is looking like.
Well, desperate times call for desperate measures, and I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about, I think, policy on foreign aid. It's really funny because a few months ago, India was not a vaccine deficit nation. In fact, a few months ago, as early as January of this year, India actually exported 65 million doses of the vaccine across 80 countries that were in need. And this is exactly the COVAX syndicate that you're talking about, right? Yeah. And it's really ironic because 5 months ago, we were in a position to export a large quantum of vaccination. And 5 months later, we're in a dire situation where we're not able to meet our need. And I guess desperate times call for desperate measures. And for the first time in India, actually for the first time in over 15 years, India has now changed their foreign policy to, for the first time, accept aid or gifts from foreign countries or NGOs or healthcare organizations. This effectively means that I could have a relative sitting in a different part of the world who actually gifts me an oxygen cylinder, and the country is now obliged to accept that gift. And this is the first time in 15 years we're doing it. We've had very, very dire situations in the past. In fact, as recently as 3 years ago in 2018, we had these terrible floods in Kerala. Kerala is a coastal state that sits on the western coast of India, just below Bombay. In fact, it hugs the western coast of the peninsula of India. And we had these monumental floods. And a lot of the Malayali population that's indigenous to Kerala, they actually work in the Gulf, they work in the UAE, and they work in countries around. And the UAE had offered donations to the tune of 700 crore rupees. And the
Whoa.
Indian government shut that off. They said, no, our policy is that we do not take aid from foreign nations. In
Yeah,
fact,
yeah,
even
yeah.
the Maldives, which is a friend of India, even the Maldives said that we're willing to contribute 50 lakh rupees in their capacity as best as they could help. And India said, no, we will not accept.
Because it's that movement, right? Self-reliant India. That's
Yes,
the
absolutely.
movement. Yeah. So there's this pride in that.
Absolutely. And now cut to 2021, we have over 40 nations who are now pledging their help to India, clearly because of the situation that we're in. And India says, "Aapko khushi se dena hai, to hum lenge." So it's a roundabout way of accepting it. Because we're in a desperate situation, we have to, right?
Yeah, man.
Of course, there are the economic superpowers. Of course, Biden has finally said, now we will contribute raw materials so that you can manufacture the virus, and ranging from the US to Australia, literally, different sides of the world. And then, of course, you've got the ASEAN nations as well, right? You've got Thailand, you've got Singapore, who put their hands up and saying, we will support India, we will help India. And then you've got the SAARC nations as well. We've got, our neighbors on the east. We've got Bangladesh, who's pitched in saying we're going to help out. We've got our neighbor on the northeast, which is Bhutan, that's saying they're going to help out. And what I was most pleasantly surprised by is Pakistan put their hand up and said, we're going to help out. Both the state did it, and private organizations and NGOs and charitable trusts did it. And it was such a heartwarming gesture when I read those articles from the Idi Foundation, writing to the Prime Minister's office saying, we will help out. Because, it really showed that there is hope in humanity during this time of, crisis.
No, I was waiting, you took this long list of countries that are offering the help in this time. And I was waiting Pakistan, because it's not often that we're in this position whereby we can actually make at least a little bit of a difference. And here it was the case, because there was this whole movement here, and I felt it amongst the people as well. And we saw a lot of people actually speak about, we had this hashtag trending for a while. It's sort of elitist for me to bring that up, hashtag se kya hota hai? But Pakistan stands with India. So so Idi, just a little context for some of our listeners in India. So Idi Foundation is arguably the world's largest, let's say, ambulance service. And it's actually an NGO that was founded by this very, very gentle gentleman. And he passed away a couple of years ago. Now his son runs the organization, and they are a godsend for all of Pakistan. So if something happens, or if you need an ambulance, someone passes away, we don't actually, look for the government number or call police or anything like that. We simply, everybody knows the Idi number, and the people of Pakistan rely on this not-for-profit organization to actually do this very critical thing. So the fact that they've been able to, albeit it was only 50 ambulances that Idi Foundation managed to pledge, but still, that's 50 people a day at least that can perhaps take some help. And katra samandar. I'm actually out from a state I think I've been seeing we've got pledges from everyone, from the Prime Minister, from our Foreign Office. They're trying to at least, once again, so given the size and scale of India, I'm sure whatever the country can offer, Pakistan can offer, is not massive. It's probably, it's just going to fan out one flame in the giant inferno that's raging through India right now. But it's a welcome change. Actually, it's something that we're doing both from a state level. Our Foreign Office spokesperson also, recently said, we'll send, it's not just the ambulances, we'll send ventilators, we'll send X-ray machines, PPEs, related items. What I'm surprised is that, it's the circumstances that mold you, and you begin to realize how globally connected we are. That I was surprised to hear that even China, so Pakistan ke saath to rivalry hai, theek hai, suna hai humne, and this podcast is all about trying to get rid of that. But China, I mean, you guys had a pretty intense situation with China, and over the years you've been at loggerheads actually. And I think India has also opened up to China now, helping them out, and China can probably do significant more, given that there seems to be no adverse news coming out of them after the whole Wuhan thing. Probably they have it in control or whatever. But it just this disease is probably, after 10 years, if we're still around, would be like, this is the thing that put us in our place, told us, showed us perspective that we were missing for so long, man.
It's sad though. I mean, that even though we're in this situation, and India's got a difficult political situation on both sides of the border, on the east with Pakistan, on the west with Pakistan, on the east with China. And as you rightly said, over the last 12 months, things with China have been really, really, on a sticky wicket, with what's going on in Ladakh around, the Pangong. So, but despite that, I mean, they've not said no to China. But despite that, we're still dilly-dallying, and not accepting the help that we're getting from Pakistan, both from NGOs and from state. And I find this really ironic. In fact, I find that there's so much criticism, right, in the media about this non-committal move on India's part. And, some very prominent people, there's your story to tell, but I was reading an article about a progressive Pakistani historian called Dr. Mubarak Ali. And, he recently wrote a post that someone shared with me saying that, in the mishandling of the coronavirus pandemic in India and Pakistan proves that oxygen has become more important than uranium, right? It's become so ironic. And is it not time for us to wake up, for both of us to invest in public health and focus less on warmongering? I mean, it's ridiculous, right? The other day, a very, very prominent filmmaker in India called Hansal Mehta, he just produced a lovely web series called Scam 1992, which was about the Harshad Mehta scam that took place on the Bombay Stock Exchange in the year 1992. Of course, lovely web series that just went live a few months ago. And he put up a tweet, saying that Indians and Pakistanis are cut from the same cloth. We're breathing the same air. It's a very, very difficult time in India. I wonder what the times are like in Pakistan, and it obviously came from a place of concern. And he just got ruined on social media. People called him a traitor and a gaddar. And one man even offered to buy him a one-way ticket to Pakistan, saying, you please go to Pakistan. You deserve to belong with your people. And it was just ridiculous that even in these times when people are reaching out saying, I'm putting my sentiment out, I'm putting my concern out for, my brothers and sisters, irrespective of border, caste, creed, race, religion. And people are so trigger happy to jump onto this, and the media is just picking it up and lapping it up and, it's completely sensationalizing it. And it's just so embarrassing, to be honest, the state of affairs that we're in right now.
नहीं, वो तुम अगर उसमें थोड़ा डीपर जाते तो वो एक्चुअली टिकट नहीं थी. I don't know. I did follow the story a little bit because it was a little bit insulting. यार मतलब ठीक है. I mean, we are Pakistan, but इसका ये मतलब नहीं है कि तुम पाकिस्तान चले जाओ. It's like a hellhole. It's not that hellhole. But it's just, you're right. So that hits close to home when you say something like, oxygen is more important than uranium. It hits close to home because our countries have been so focused on first, the nuclear arms race, and now we're both nuclear, and now it's all about deterrence theory and God knows what. So it's disproportionately, probably the reason we're in this mess is if we had funneled some of that money instead of enriching uranium for the bombs. I mean, we could have put some of that over the years, over the decades actually, into our healthcare systems, and probably both our countries would be much better off, and we'd be able to take on this challenge at this moment in a way that other developed nations are actually doing. Given that there's so many doctors, medical profession in Pakistan and India is like best in class. right? So it's just the infrastructure that has been historically missing and continues to be missing. So वो यही है कि हम वो इतने साल हो गए हमें इंडिपेंडेंट हुए, ब्रिटिश से हम वो हो गए, but we've since been stockpiling all of that funds into this is a defense budget, now this is this budget, now this is that budget, but where it actually needs to go, and this is the moment where it's like the boy who cried wolf. This is the moment where we needed the infrastructure, but it's not because here are some bombs. Try to use the bombs. Well, we don't need them. We need oxygen cylinders. We need ventilators. We need hospital beds. And Pakistan they claim that while it's not quite there yet, but we're at 90% capacity. We're running out of beds. We're running out of cylinders. We're running out of ventilators. I mean, what can one do, man? I just feel like every time I stop talking and you can talk, I just end up this note, because yes, there are some, every time there's a positive light that comes in, it's this sort of politics that comes into play and sort of diffuses it all together. ये हो रहा है, एम्बुलेंस आ रही है, नहीं आ सकती, चलो मिलके काम करते हैं, नहीं हो सकता. In the it's just what can one do?
No, I hear you, Umair, and I want to take a minute to actually talk about the sentiment of the people. Obviously, the media has to print what sells, but I want to talk about the sentiment of the people. And there are a couple of very interesting insights actually, right, with the sentiment of the people. So obviously the sentiment towards the government at the moment is slightly hostile, as you can imagine.
Yeah, I saw that.
People are very, very upset by the government's absolute lack of responsibility of how they've handled the situation in context to what their priorities have been. Of course, there are elections going on in India in a couple of states. Tamil Nadu just got over, West Bengal just got over. But having said that, I mean, it doesn't give them the right to propagate the rallies the way they have done and conduct these mass super spreader events. And just day before yesterday, I read an article about the Kumbh Mela that you just spoke about very briefly, about how 99% of people returning home from the Kumbh Mela are actually testing positive. And with the number of people that attended, 99% in Madhya Pradesh tested positive. I read an article just 2 days ago, and in fact, and I can't even imagine what that's going to do for the country, right? And when our leaders are encouraging this behavior, what do you expect public sentimentality to be, right? So everyone says that Modi needs to take responsibility for his poor judgment and his, lack of, heed to the general, populace. There's hashtags going around saying Modi should resign, and I'm sure everyone in the world is aware about how Facebook is now censoring content like that, banning accounts, shutting down such people who are, apparently speaking against the state. The BBC has pulled up, the public relations officer and, interviewed him, but to absolute no avail. Obviously the public sentiment is that India should be accepting all the help that it gets, because Indians are dying at the moment. And the reality of the situation is that 65% of India lives, hovering around the poverty line, below the poverty line. It fluctuates, and doesn't have access to organized public health care. It's so sad, At the same time, we've seen this shift of these 40 countries now wanting to contribute to, towards aid to India. And Pakistan has been one such country. And, I just want to take a minute to talk about a social intelligence statistic as well, So for our listeners, social intelligence essentially is intelligence that we gather by conducting audits and analysis of several thousands and millions of conversations on the internet, where we are able to track and analyze conversations from a variety of people on the internet that speak about particular subjects. And one of the subjects that we've obviously been tracking very aggressively is the sentiment of Pakistan in India, and likewise the sentiment of India in Pakistan. And Umair, I am very, very pleasantly surprised to report that in the month of April, for the first time in India, Pakistan has reported a 14.3% positive sentiment. And this has happened for the first time in the last 1 year that we've been tracking the sentiment. It's always been negative. Wow. The word cloud has always been peppered with war or law or police or, buzzwords relating to insecurity and politics and the case may be, and terror and stuff
the
like
usual
that.
suspects.
The usual suspects. For the first time in the month of April, when Pakistan has offered aid both in capacity of state and capacity of NGO, I think the sentiment has moved 14.5% on the positive half of the curve for the first time. And this is a very, very big win as far as public perception in India is concerned. And I want to take a second to talk about this, while we do discuss the public sentiment in India. What's the public sentiment in Pakistan like right now?
Yeah, so I don't have you're better with data. So I all I have is the people that I speak to and people surrounding me, right? So and the conversations that I'm hearing. I haven't done a formal audit yet. Maybe you can tell me about what you found in the formal audit for Pakistan. Magar मैं तुम्हें बताऊं कि what's been a little disappointing is while since you're speaking about these online conversations, right? So one big proponent seems to be the distribution of video content through WhatsApp. And because of that, I don't know who's starting these videos, but they're ending up like I'm from personal experience, I can say, well, our cleaning lady who was not cleaning the house for the last 1 year, we'd given her off. Then things were getting better, so we brought her back in. And then so she, as soon as she started working, the surge happened. So we asked her, since you're here, we'll turn on the air conditioners in the house, but it won't be as hot, but you have to wear the mask because it's good for you, it's good for us, everything. So later on I noticed she's not wearing it. Like, Amma, please wear it. Like, okay, begrudgingly wears it. So the next day, when she's again not wearing it, even though I'm trying to facilitate her. Once again, I'm sure this sounds very elitist, but the heart of the matter is that her kids. Now this is a maybe a 70-year-old woman, 60-year-old woman, right? And she's a very, very hardworking person. She's a wonderful lady, otherwise very, very devoted. But her kids had told her, who I presume are slightly older than me and some younger than me. The kids had told her that showed her some videos on WhatsApp and said, ये देखें अब वो एक वीडियो है जिसमें basically someone is boiling the mask और उसके जो nylons है वो they're dancing around because of the temperature change and all of that, and they're like the subtext and the overlay, the VO is that this is a device that's being used by दुश्मन of Pakistan, जैसे वो हमारी नस्लें खराब हो, हमारे नाक में कीड़े चले जाएं. So and because she falls into that set whereby she can just go and हमारे घर के साथ ही hospital है. I told her I'll take you. You get your vaccine done and it'd be nice, safe for you, safe for me. So she's like, no, my kids have said इससे नस्लें खराब होती हैं. We're like, we are 60 plus. I mean, और कितनी तुमने नस्लें करनी है तो भले अपने बच्चे को नहीं कराओ, लेकिन at least you should do it. I mean, it's because this, people like this, I mean, we're comfortably sitting here in our palaces, just not going out. We have the liberty, but daily wage earners have to go out, and she's in that age range where she has to travel in public transport and everything. So just get it done. But it's tough. So these digital tools and these sort of things that we take for granted, sometimes I see that they actually are adversely affecting the conversation and the perception of this whole disease. As a matter of fact, only today chalo ye to ek different class. Only today I went to the bookshop to get some stuff. And I've been going to that bookshop. It's in my neighborhood. I've been going to that bookshop for some 20 odd years, right? So I've seen the uncle. He's an engineer, very well versed, very nice guy, very padhe likhe, good, like upper middle class किस्म के लोग हैं. And even my wife, when we got married, she moved there. We've been going to that bookshop. We've always had very high praise for these people. So this uncle was sitting there, and one of his friends comes over. So the kids man the counter, and the uncle just sits around sometimes, hangs out with his friends at the bookshop. So this friend of his comes, and he's the same age range, like 60 plus something, and he's like, आज मेरा shot लग गया, मेरी पहली vaccination हो गई. So knee-jerk reaction of this guy was, sir, किस चक्कर में पड़ गए हैं, आपको पता नहीं है लंबी गेम है बड़ी, ये हमारे साथ. फिर वो एक tirade शुरू हो गया कि हमारे साथ यूं कर रहे हैं, और obviously they will not give the real vaccine to Pakistan, they're just giving some sugar water or what, and then it's better that we fend off by ourselves, not understanding that we're seeing in our neighbors what's going on, but वो उनको threat नजर नहीं आती. उनको जो threat नजर आती है, I don't know what it is. ये कहाँ से अफवाह आती है, क्यों हमें इतनी सारी insecurities है? But that threat is that someone is trying to, you know, take over our culture, take over our autonomy, you know, make us all uh, emancipated. I don't know what. So ये public sentiment is the only public sentiment that, क्योंकि this is the stuff that bothers me, and this is stuff that I actually जो मेरे कान में जाके फंस जाता है. So I've been hearing a lot of this, and I'm trying, but you know, we're trying to fix this both. So Rabi and I have both decided, okay, we're going to pick fights and be vocal about anyone who's not wearing a mask, right? So, you know, we're going to say, you know, we went out today to get some stuff from the store. So I'm a very non-confrontational guy, right? But so still, you know, we picked up the courage to tell someone, "Bhai, mask upar karo." Yeah, nahi pehno. You know, say, okay, fine, I'll jump into the jaws of death. Koi masla nahi. Agar pehn rahe ho to, you know, what's this use? Just social distancing karo. So we're trying to get all of that stuff out. Otherwise, it seems जैसे आपका कुंभ मेला था, वैसे there are cultural and religious, let's say, super spreader events that, as a matter of fact, हमारा पूरा जो wave शुरू हुआ था, why we got it. Otherwise, तो शायद इतना बुरा नहीं होता. It was actually a religious event that happened, you know, in there's this sort of religious retreat that happens up north in Pakistan. There's a lot of religious people going. It's very, very well respected. Very, it's a great cultural event otherwise, right? So it's very, very respected in society. But at that point, I guess they didn't know or they didn't care, and you know that spread the first wave. Abhi bhi yeah, that we are sitting in Ramzan right now, like I said, you know, it's going to be Eid, and you know the markets are jam packed, unless the Fauj comes and says Dande se nahi band karo, jao bhago. Still people are out. Abhi bhi agar, you know, if I take this camera and show you just the road outside my house, people are playing, they play cricket. I mean, that's fine, play it, मगर थोड़ा सा ख्याल तो रखे ना. तो वो सारी चीजें हैं. आप, you know, आप there seems to be some warning from up above in the echelons of our government. So everyone from the Prime Minister downwards, you know, so Prime Minister, specifically in the case of India, you know, he sent his solidarity, which is rare because, you know, this is someone that usually leans on the right, and he's typically should be afraid of blowback because Pakistan, and you know, this sort of blowback, political blowback can come. But he went out of his way to actually say it out loud on a public forum that, you know, we have solidarity, and then his cabinet and his ministers did all that thing whereby they're trying to send out help and all. And even like celebrities, even ordinary people, I see, they're split down the middle. So you've got people like, especially sports ki dunya mein, you know, you've got someone like Shoaib Akhtar, you know, who's come out and said on his social channels that, you know, he's giving his support. Pakistan stands with India. You know, you've got people like Farhan Saeed, who's a singer and actor. A lot of people are doing this, but it's not, I wouldn't say, I wish it was just as simple as just one-sided tale. My personally bata raha hu, so this is because we're vested in this project. I actually pitched to a client of ours this thing that, you know, this Pakistan stands with India is a great way to actually, you know, speak about what's right, and show your positive side to the community, and you know, have a presence in the minds of people. So the brand was okay with it. Okay, I'm under NDA, so I can't really tell who it is. Brand was okay with it, but when we actually reached out to celebrities, and especially, you know, people from the sports arena, people from the music arena, people that are running NGOs and stuff, that I would expect would be the first people to say, okay, you know what, yes, we will send that little video message and we'll compile that thing. You know, we'll take part in this. Some of them declined, some of them said, मैं बीमार हूँ, मैं ये हूँ, मैं हूँ. Underlining message यही था कि there is always this fear of a backlash. Whenever you in Pakistan, you know, only when you have massive cojones, only when you have the balls to say that, you know, which some people have, but there's always this fear, and I have this fear as well, right? So whenever I have this conversation, whenever we're recording a podcast, I'm especially conscious of the fact that one day this can blow up. So, and you know, they can come and, you know, someone's going to put me up a stick and say, you know, it's called. So there's this fear, and it's both ways. That's how the sentiment stands, at least from where I sit.
No, I know what you mean, because of course there's increasing fear in India as well. It starts with censorship, and you know, the rules have changed so drastically now with regards to saying anything against the government on a public or private forum, and people are so afraid of even their WhatsApp messages being read. Khair, I mean, that's an ongoing challenge, I guess, which we have to kind of deal with. And, as people who are creators, then I think we need to focus on our agenda and spreading the word. But that brings us to an interesting point, because you spoke about Imran Khan getting onto a public platform and sending his wishes, amongst a variety of other popular Pakistani faces. Of course, sports, entertainment, culture, music being, very integral to South Asian subculture in that context, South Asian culture in that context. Nevertheless,
Yeah.
on one side, of course, while there is, a certain amount of rallying political support that comes from different parts of the world, and of course, in context to today's conversation, Pakistan in specific, in India, the politicization of the pandemic has taken a new level altogether. So it's really funny, because in India, the state and center are divided on three very imperative matters at the moment. One is where the states are doing everything in their control to restrict movement without hampering economic activity and trying to institutionalize a lockdown, and the center saying, we do not support it. We do not endorse the word lockdown. We cannot call a national lockdown. The country will go to the dogs, economically speaking, of course, right? And the states and the center have been torn with this one decision, right? The second is the distribution of the vaccines, because the center was controlling the distribution of the vaccines to the states on the basis of population density, infections, cases, comorbidities, basically the census distribution of the states. And all of a sudden, overnight, the center is now telling the states, look, you guys need to figure out the balanced vaccines on your own. And overnight, the states now have to fend for themselves, import vaccines from global players. I would imagine there'll be decentralization of procurement, obviously, which means there'll be commercial, leakages that will take place, etc. The third thing is, of course, the control and the distribution of essential supplies. And the most essential supply at the moment is oxygen, which is what India is really, really lacking, which is leading to, these massive number of deaths that we're seeing. And it's so sad to see that, because of the politicization of the problem, because of course, the centers controlled by the BJP and different states in India controlled by different, political parties that may not necessarily have aligned with the BJP. Like in Bombay, for instance, the Bombay is in a state called Maharashtra, which is controlled by the Shiv Sena, which does not align with the BJP. And we see that tussle every single day. And it's so sad that because of their political disconnection, public sentiment, public healthcare, infrastructure, basic amenities and necessities are taken for granted. And that's the extent that the pandemic has been politicized to. When it comes to talking about taking political advantage of, I mentioned briefly, I gave you two examples. West Bengal elections just concluded, Tamil Nadu elections just concluded. The government, the Prime Minister Modi himself has gone and conducted rallies of thousands and thousands of people. Where is the concept of social distancing? Where is the concept of stay home, stay safe? Where is the concept of keep your mask on and do not yell at the top of your voices and expose your lungs to, so much environmental threat? The Kumbh Mela just got over. The UP government, and the UP is the most populated state in India. The UP government has been advertising and advocating the Kumbh Mela. In fact, for our listeners around the world who don't know this, and our listeners in Pakistan who don't know this, the Mahakumbh was actually scheduled for 2022. They pulled it back by a year for quote-unquote astrological reasons, despite the fact that the country is probably going through the worst time it's seen in our lifetimes. They're now forwarding something by 1 year for astrological reasons and saying that don't worry, if you take a dip in the holy Ganges, there's no coronavirus that can ever get you. And Madhya Pradesh just reported 3 days ago that 99% of all Kumbh participants have come back and tested positive. And this blatant abuse of power when it comes to politicization of weaknesses and just taking advantage of the fickle state that the country is in, the fickle relations that the center has with the state, or the states have with the center, actually, if I may be more politically correct in that context. And I feel it's led to such an embarrassing situation. The center has not yet acknowledged or accepted the help offered by a neighboring country, which is Pakistan. And speculation suggests that they won't do it, of course, because so much public flack and blah, blah, blah. But the way I look at it is Lahore is 6 hours away from Delhi, right? Those ambulances
Yeah.
can be in Delhi by breakfast tomorrow morning if the PMO signs off on that letter saying yes.
Yeah.
And 50
Yeah.
ambulances can save 100 lives a day. And 100 lives a day saved is 100 more lives than were saved yesterday, right? Where do your politics get involved in saving lives? And this is where the conversation has broken down for me and has broken down for several other people, who've had the opportunity to study the politicization of this pandemic in a slightly academic and yet practical fashion. And it's really sad to say that in times of crisis, this politicization, has prioritized politics over human life. And it makes us actually sit back and question what these guys are in power for and what their priorities are, right? And it's said to, generations have taught us that there is unity in adversity. We see that, right, with the public sentiment in Pakistan and India, and it's better than it's ever been. Yes, it may be torn, it may be divided, it will always be torn and divided for many years to come. But the fact that the PMO has reached out himself, the Imran Khan has reached out himself, private organizations, NGOs, foreign affairs ministers reached out saying, we are willing to support you guys. There is a certain amount of positive public sentimentality around this. They're trying to help one another, trying to show unity in terms of this, in times of this adversity. The government's political ego and stance is now standing in the way, and it's not letting people contribute to the best of their abilities. And that is just so sad. And that's what's heartbreaking, that there's no concept of protection of life. And that's what our officers in power should be prioritizing first.
नहीं ये so sad to report that this is not just one-sided, right? So similar let's say hurdles are there in the political willpower here as well. So even these quotes and these tweets and this stuff that I'm quoting, whereby Pakistan's foreign office is offering this and saying that, and so there's always this asterisk down there. कभी आप उनकी tweets में नीचे जाएंगे, अगर if you happen to read a news website or so you'll be able to find that there is going to be an ask there as well. So whether it's something like revise your decision on Kashmir or do this or do that, that is still there. So the general sentiment on the outside seems to be that humanity first, but there is always this hook there कि किसी वक्त भी if agenda है कि कहीं भी किसी वक्त अगर जरूरत पड़ी तो we can turn this into a PR move per se, and then use it to leverage our viewpoint, the state's viewpoint over certain issues to the other side and to the international community. We're dangling this in return. So it's it's yet because we're not in that situation yet whereby this sort of situation hasn't presented itself yet here in Pakistan. So I'm not sure how our state will actually respond to it, whether they will be braver, whether they'll be able to take those unpopular decisions or not. That remains to be seen. As a matter of fact, these days, so during the end of Ramzan, there's this religious procession that goes out called the Yawm-e-Ali. The Yawm-e-Ali is very important, especially for the Shia community of Pakistan. And then even last year, because of the height of COVID, I think it was banned. And this year also the government is trying to ban it. Ban in the sense that they're saying that, don't take this procession because it's a very elaborate procession. And it's a very powerful moment for a lot of people, but it literally requires physical bringing together of lots of people. So the government has said that isko jo hai, I think Lahore, Punjab government has banned it, Sindh hasn't banned it, something like that. So there's a whole conversation around that. वहाँ पे भी यही है कि is there a play of politics of power in here? Because on one hand you're saying that this one community can't do this, which seems to make sense on the outset, but on the other hand you're saying that okay, the rest of the majority, let's say Sunni population, majority they can do their Taraweehs, which is something that was not allowed last year. They can do their congregational prayers and that sort of stuff. So even wherever we look around, every road we unravel, there seems to be some play of politics, some like you said, some hidden agenda. I hate using that word because it just makes me sound like a conspiracy theorist. But there seems to be, like I said, sheer willpower जो है वो अभी तक ऐसी नहीं है कि जिसको exemplary तरीके से history books में लिखा जाए कि this person or this government or this at this point Pakistan or at this point India, they took the higher road and they took the higher ground, the moral ground, and they decided to sacrifice, let's say, their own political agendas for the betterment of their own people, literally their own people. It doesn't even have, I mean, we're not doing it to save India, we're doing it to save ourselves. So likewise, when you accept, if India does accept those 50 odd ambulances, it's not, it's, yeah, sure, it's going to be a blip on the radar, but it's going to save our brothers on the other side of there. They're human beings. Humanity first, nice hashtag, but hard, still a long road to go, I'm afraid.
No, it's so sad. I shouldn't even say it's sad. I should say it's heartbreaking that this political agenda and propaganda now stands above humanity and prioritizes political agenda, ego, call it what you want, above human life. And it's unfortunate that this is what the world has come to today. And this is the world that we live in. And, we're seeing so much death and despair around us, but yet we have to make our peace with this fact that this political agenda and ego is coming above humanity in their list of priorities. To all our listeners, our hearts go out to all of those who are suffering, and our prayers go out to all those families that are battling the crisis with as much resources as they have, as limited resources as they have, but with all the endurance and all the strength and all the resolve in their hearts.
Yeah, and further on as well, let's hope that together, like not just as Indians and Pakistanis, but as human beings, we can come together as a community because we share, like, our underlying message for the entire podcast is that if we share so many things, sure there are differences, but we share so many things, and let's try to find common ground, and as populations, try to use every resource that we have to actually make a better future for ourselves, and to ensure that the people that are around us live to see another day, because that is the core thing that's being challenged right now. It's that people around us, we've even last year we were slightly behind India in terms of that thing. So maybe tomorrow I'm in the same, you'd see the same sort of footage coming out of Pakistan. We can't sit idly by and let petty things like politics actually disturb the course of human life. It's we have to do it together. So this podcast is actually the way Suvir and I imagined it was it's our little effort to highlight this issue, and it's a general appeal to everybody, any and everybody that listens to this, that please, for the sake for human beings, not just for the sake of Indians, but for the sake of human beings, for the sake of mankind, we literally, there's this fear. Once again, I come to this. I shouldn't be rooting for the fact that India's in so much trouble. They got what was coming to them. I shouldn't be afraid to root for the success, for them to pull themselves out of this. And similarly for Suvir, I say we're so caught up in our little webs that even if I attempt to say the opposite, I am afraid that how will it be taken in society? Will I be locked up? Will something happen? I can't root for the other side. So at least this is a little start from our end. And I hope that whoever is listening to this, whether you're listening to it right now in this very difficult time that is going through India and Pakistan, or whether you're listening to it 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, hopefully we were able to overcome this, and hopefully it was a sad but meaningful part of our journey, and hopefully we've come out stronger in the end. And as a final note, let me and Suvir start on this thing, whereby I send my best wishes to India.
And we look forward from all the support that we can receive from Pakistan.
If you enjoyed this podcast, there is no better way to support us than to spread our message to like-minded folks. Follow us on our socials. We're most active on Instagram, but you can find us posting on Facebook, YouTube, SoundCloud, and all the other usual suspects. Just search for 883 to Infinity. And if you're feeling really generous, maybe put up a story about us and talk about how awesome we are. The usual.
Also, if you have an idea for us to explore, or know of someone that would be a great guest on 883, just drop us a message on Insta. We want this to be as interactive as possible and would love to feature and possibly dissect your thoughts on India, Pakistan, the bonds that join us, and the gaps that separate us. This podcast was produced by Janvi Shetty, edited by Bijal Kakkad and Abbas Mahableshwarwala. Our social content is powered by Apurva, Arshi, and Purva from Team Mammoth.
Support the 883 art project led by Akash and Ahmed.
All views and opinions expressed in this podcast are not meant to offend or hurt the sentiments of, including, but not limited to, any person, dead or alive, religion or ethnic group, community or country. The primary purpose of this podcast is to build a cultural bridge and shed light on the similarities that we share with our friends from across the border.